going to be a pretty quick video in which I actually just want to address a couple of YouTube commenters who have left messages that were critical of me on my posts. A couple of recent posts by a YouTube commenter whose username is wwrf-s8s, but also Geigenzähler, who I've talked about before and has not commented recently, had instead commented a number of months ago on some of my older videos, and I already had made some videos in which I directly addressed him and responded to that. I don't know if Geigenzähler is still reading, and he did tell me that even if he was still reading and watching, that he probably wasn't going to comment anymore. So maybe you see this, maybe you don't, Geigenzähler, but I also want to be clear, I have no harsh words for either you or the other more recent YouTube commenter in this video. This is not about criticizing either of you at all. It's not about apologizing to you either exactly, but just giving you a little bit of explanation of some things. Because it strikes me that even though I think you both have said some wrong things in the comments of my videos, I still feel like you've done some reading. You've clearly looked at the blogs a bit and watched some videos and formed semi-intelligent opinions about a lot of this stuff, even if you have believed some of the side of the liars a little too much, in my opinion. But it's also clear to me about both of you that you are people who are willing to sort of look at your own opinions, put them out there and inspect them and maybe change and update your views based on new information and new insight. And I say that to commend both of you. I see that in you in terms of that ability to learn and grow and update your opinions with new information. I also want to be clear that I was extremely rude to wwrf-s8s. I don't know another name for you, so it's a little awkward mouthful, but I don't know another way to say it to you. In some of my recent YouTube comments. And I did explain in another quick YouTube short that I made that those particular comments, a lot of which I was just cussing at him and yelling at him, were when I was pretty drunk. I had just gotten home late in the evening after a night out drinking. So I certainly believe that I was, more reactive in that moment and would have used a few more cuss words than I would have otherwise at other times. But at the same time, the underlying content of the message is one that I completely stand by. And I do think that it's quite possible, even if I was not drinking, that I would have said messages that essentially said the same thing and maybe just used fewer cuss words along the way. I do think WWRF-S8S, you were being very presumptuous. And that's the thing, it's like, I understand it was coming from a place of analyzing what I had said and written and talking earnestly about things you did not like, things that you disagreed with me about. And you're entitled to that disagreement. You're absolutely entitled to that disagreement. But I feel like where you really crossed the line was not disagreeing with me or starting a dialogue. If anything, I appreciate that. It was thinking that you knew better than I did and that you could lecture me. And that you were so certain that I was wrong in how I had handled the situations with the anonymous woman who made the rape allegation against Chris Lipe, and that I had to apologize to her. And that really, I feel, is a very, very presumptuous position. I'm not saying I owe her an apology. I'm not saying I don't. I'm not saying I haven't already apologized to her. I'm not saying I have. I'm saying that you know none of those details, right? So the point is that you are just jumping to conclusions and saying these things based on very limited information. And I understand that from your point of view, you're just starting a conversation and you've actually been pretty civil and pretty rational. And here's this guy just immediately jumping out and cussing at you, and he seems very unreasonable and angry, and you don't like that guy. And you're right on that front. Well, you don't understand also that I have been dealing with this situation for 9 years, and I have dealt with so many people like you. I have dealt with so many people whose emotions immediately got set off by something and were so judgmental of me before they knew the full story and were ready to criticize me. And I've had to spend so much time defending myself from this stuff and explaining myself over and over again, when very fundamentally in the story, this is a story of how a bunch of people, the Clinchies and Chris Lipe and Lola, and you can even see Dave Pellin, all abused me. And I was the innocent victim in all of this, and that is very much the case, right? Notwithstanding the early emails and text messages I sent to Jennifer that originally set her off, there is no question that at the fundamental core for most of the years of this story, it is a story of this set of people abusing me and me being the victim. And quite simply, the lies that they told have gotten so many people to have such a distorted view of this that they feel a moral right to attack me, to criticize me, to go after me for telling my story and for doing it in such a way that is in some ways formed by the trauma, by the PTSD that I suffered as a result of this abuse. And quite simply, all of the punishments of the Scrabble community, all of the lifetime ban stuff, not just the lifetime ban stuff, but the original 3-year ban, all of the real cause of that was the Scrabble community misperceiving my anger at being abused in the first place. Quite simply, the reason I got so upset that Lola saw in the time that we were together, living together, is because I've been abused by the Clinchies and Chris Light for so long, and that had already done so much psychological damage to me, and what she was seeing was the manifestation of that damage, of that abuse. And she absolutely knew that at the time. She absolutely would have admitted that I was in bad shape mentally and very upset and very angry, and it was because these people had behaved so inhumanly to me. But she changed her interest. She ended up, going separate ways from the relationship with me, and getting involved with them and their friend group, and realizing that singing a different tune was going to help her in that particular situation. And maybe she wanted to suck up to them. Maybe she believed her bullshit. It's hard for me to say how much of it she actually believed and how much she knew she was being disingenuous, but there are a lot of ways in which she went back on the story and the beliefs that she very clearly had when we were together. And I'm completely serious when I say she read the whole thing before I made it all public. She helped me shape it. She helped me figure out which parts I should be saying to the public and which parts I should not be saying to the public. And she was completely under the belief at the time that the Clinchies were just really, really shitty people. So, anyway, my point in all of this is that when I am angry with you, when I do cuss like this, there are a few reasons for it. One is that I have PTSD, and it's very hard to deal with so many people just jumping to conclusions that I'm a guilty party and are attacking me. The other thing is, Geigenzähler, I feel like, gave a really good reading to a lot of my earlier blog stuff and picked up on the fact that I was being a little cagey around not talking about the inner workings of the relationship with Lola and the conversations that we had. And I believe I was doing nothing wrong in doing that. As I also made clear, even in the video where I talked about that, I was under no obligation, either legally or morally, to do so. I should have been able to defend myself and get all of these charges in Scrabble dismissed for me and have full access to orange without having to explain those conversations that I had with Lola. But I chose to anyway. And I know that's specifically something Geigenzähler asked for. And I did in a way, even though I didn't do it at the time that Geigenzähler asked, I did later actually provide his explanations. It's essentially exactly what Geigenzähler was asking for. These are what happened in these conversations. These are the people I was actually angry about. This is what actually fucking happened. And I think you'll see that even if I wasn't as explicit in all of it, that the hints I gave and the way I wrote the stuff up in the document is completely consistent with the story that I told in that recent YouTube video where I actually went into more detail about the conversations with Lola in the time that we were living together. And Geigenzähler, what I hope you see as a result of all of this is part of the reason I was trying to be careful about not opening that can of worms in the first place. Because even though I'm a much more psychologically healthy person, even though I have a massive amount of self-control, and I was actually, in a very responsible way, admitting and looking at my own anger and growing and being an emotionally mature person, other people, especially avoidant people, are going to be so fearful of me even mentioning that at one point I had homicidal feelings toward Chris Light, that they're going to freak out. They're going to get really angry. They're going to assume I'm the bad guy and attack me, as wwrf-s8s did. So that is something I think, Geigenzähler, that you should take as a little more perspective as to the question of whether I should open that can of worms or not. At the same time, I want to be clear. wwrf-s8s, I don't have a problem with you having the initial emotional reactions you did. It's totally okay to get the reactions you did. Just don't assume you know better than I do and you need to lecture me. And I do believe there's a good chance that as I answer some of your questions, you're going to update your views and not be so judgmental of me in the future. And I'm glad for that if that is the case. I think you both seem like reasonable, intelligent people who are capable of updating your opinions, as I said. But the fact is that on the internet especially, there are a lot of people who aren't. There are a lot of people who have to hop on this emotional bandwagon, and that's why you got so many likes on your comments, and nobody gave me any likes on my comments, which completely refuted your arguments. You know why? Because I was pissing people off by cussing left and right and looking like the asshole. And there's a great number of people who, like you, were experiencing what are moral feelings. And I want to be really clear about this. The way you were moralizing at me was moral feelings. It was not actual morality. You didn't have the information to make full moral judgments on the situation. Based on your limited knowledge of the situation, you had moral feelings, and there's a whole lot of people on the internet who had similar moral feelings and wanted to hop on a bandwagon of thumbing up a bunch of posts. It also happened with Ellie Dangore's posts, his comments on one of my earlier YouTube videos. He said stuff that was completely unhinged, completely false, and when I later actually gave a Facebook post in which I showed the complete ways in which Ellie had departed reality, it didn't matter. There were still people on these YouTube comments who gave a bunch of thumbs up to things that a completely delusional person said. And that's because there's a whole lot of people living in this world of emotions, experiencing these moral feelings, and who want to use the internet as a vehicle for getting those moral feelings out. And I want to be clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with that entirely. It can have a traumatic effect on me, that kind of gang up effect, that kind of bandwagoning and all that stuff. But it didn't particularly hurt me what you guys did. I didn't have enough of an emotional connection to you guys for it to actually hurt. It hurt more with Ellie Dangor because he's someone I did have a long previous relationship with, and he is someone who we have a lot of mutual friends, a lot of mutual connections in the Scrabble community. And I'll be very frank, I absolutely hate Ellie Dangor's guts now. I think he is an evil person, and he's not an evil person by intention. He's not like Chris Lipe in terms of having bad intentions. I believe Ellie has completely good intentions. He's just a gullible sap who is able to be persuaded by evil to literally believe that evil is good and good is evil, and then may do things that are inadvertently actually abusing a good person who was the victim in this situation. And Ellie Dangor did abuse me. What he did was unquestionably abuse in the way that he contacted me multiple times over text message. I made clear I didn't want to talk to him anymore, and he was so fucking delusional that he kept attacking me over those text messages. And I want to be clear, Ellie, I hate your fucking guts, and the only way there's ever a chance of us repairing our relationship is you recognizing that you were completely in the fucking wrong and you apologizing to me for everything you said in those text messages, and admitting I was right about everything and that my worldview is superior to yours. And I mean that. My worldview is superior to yours. Your opinions are worth less than mine because you are a dumber person than I am who has been persuaded by evil fucking liars. And that's what it comes down to. Not all opinions are equivalent. If you do a better job of being an objective person, of seeing the objective fucking truth, your opinions actually are worth more than the opinions of the dumb shits who can't see reality correctly. So, that's what I wanted to say about that. But I also just want to say, you guys, you're welcome to keep speaking up if you see things that you disagree with. Just try to do it from a tone of saying, this is what I think, this is what I feel, this is how it seems to me, rather than, I know better than you, I'm going to lecture you. Keep in mind, I've been living in this story for about a decade, and nobody knows these details as well as I do. And I've been completely honest, I've been very objective, I've talked to therapists, I've talked to people in Scrabble, I've talked to people outside of Scrabble, I had a lot of other people look at the same texts, the same communications that I've had, and seeing that my particular take on this is not just my own biased, narcissistic opinion, it is the opinion of other third parties too. I can find lots of people who back up privately what I've said in a lot of this stuff, and I know there are a lot of people who are smart enough to know that I am the good guy who has told the truth the whole time. The problem is there are a bunch of people who are cowardly enough and who value their connection to this society, to this community of people that has a bunch of evil, immoral fucking leaders that they don't feel safe enough speak up about the abuse that has been done to me because they know it can result in their own ostracism, it can result in their own bullying. And I frankly loathe that. I wish you people had some fucking balls. That's all I gotta say for now.